Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour, COP28's final proposed deal references transition away from all fossil fuels, says move to enable the world to reach net zero by 2050. UN General Assembly overwhelmingly demands Gaza ceasefire. India votes in favor of draft resolution. 10 countries, including US and Israel, vote against it.
Any ceasefire right now would be temporary at the best and dangerous at worst.
Biden says Putin is banking on the US failing to deliver for Ukraine as he meets his Ukrainian counterpart in Washington. Zelensky says it would be insane for Ukraine to be willing to give up occupied territory. India remembers martyrs and victims who lost their lives while defending the Indian Parliament 22 years ago. Prime Minister pays floral tributes at Parliament premises. The big news we are tracking at DD India News Hour, the COP28 presidency released a proposed text of a final climate deal on Wednesday that would, for the first time, push nations to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly and equitable manner. This will be done so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. Country representatives have been called to what the COP28 presidency hopes is a final meeting later on Wednesday morning, where they could pass the deal and end 2 weeks of tough negotiations that have run a day into overtime. Deals struck at UN climate summits must be passed by consensus, at which point individual countries are responsible for delivering on the agreements through national policies and investments.
At the start of this summit, almost 2 weeks ago, there was a show of unity. The world might be a divided place at the moment, but facing up to the global challenge of climate change requires a global response. And there was early progress, wealthy nations promising money to help deal with the impact of climate change, and a growing number of countries pledging to treble renewable power output by 2030. World leaders and royalty alike all seem to be on the same page.
I've seen across the Commonwealth and beyond countless communities which are unable to withstand repeated shocks, whose lives and livelihoods are laid waste by climate change. Surely real action is required to stem the growing toll of its most vulnerable victims.
But after that, things quickly began to become more challenging. The main argument, whether there's any place for fossil fuels for a world trying to stop global warming. Yes, say the oil-rich nations, we just need better carbon capture technology. No, say many developed nations and scientists, renewables are the only way forward. And developing nations made their voices heard as well, asking for far more financial help if they're expected to decarbonise quickly. Next year's climate summit will be held in Baku in Azerbaijan, but many argue that the world can't wait that long for real progress to be made. Words need to be turned into actions, they argue, and quickly. John Beaver in Dubai, reporting for DD India.
DD India special correspondent Vinod Kumar joins us with more from Dubai. Vinod, good morning. Now, this is the big news we're tracking at DD India this hour. A new text of the COP20 presidency was released. The final climate deal was released, and it, for the first time, pushes the nation to transition away from fossil fuels in energy system. Now, this is to be done in a just, orderly and equitable manner. Can we get more details from you on this? After much wrangling, finally, the mention of fossil fuels has been included in the declaration or the proposed text of the final climate deal.
Hi, Preeti. Yes, the first draft was released yesterday, and it was met with huge opposition from the LMDs, like-minded developed countries, the least developed countries, and the global south, which is constituted in the COP28 as G77. after much of wrangling in the early wee hours of today, the Wednesday, early morning, the second draft was released. So the main objection against the first draft was on the para 39, which mentioned reduction in consumption and production of fossil fuels. So in the new draft, the demand was for to completely phase out the consumption of fossil fuels, but it is written that it does not have a commitment to phase out, but it calls on countries to contribute global efforts onto transitioning away from fossil fuels in the energy system in a just, orderly and equitable manner. This is the main contention article. But I feel that this is actually a middle ground between completely phasing away and completely, I'm just mentioning as a reduction. And the first draft, there was no commitment. It was only a could. The document, the word could was highly criticized. So this is a better wording, and there is a clear definition of climate finance here. And regarding coal also, the first document, it was written as completely phasing out of coal, but here it's probably because of India's intervention. Second, the document also experts on immediate attention to the climate finance. This is also one of the points that India has raised common but differential responsibilities has to be made its own place in the new document. Because as we know that we are not one of the historical emitters. The Global South is not one of the historical emitters. So like the loss and damage fund which was instituted in this particular COP, the common but differential responsibilities has to be given. So in the second document, the word equity comes frequently. Equity on climate justice and equity on the justice and the climate front for the countries which are at the receiving end of the climate change definitely has to be given priority. And tackling climate finance on developed nations, mobilizing climate finance on a broader array of sources. Currently, we have a set of funds called Adaptation Fund, the Global GCF Fund, the Least Developed Countries Fund. But how these coffers of these funds are being filled? A big question that has been raised in this COP, and this the second draft. This is still a second draft only. It has not been signed. Again, there will be discussion. And COP28, as you know, is based on consensus of these 200 countries. So if these 200 countries come to a consensus on the broader array of sourcing these funds, definitely we can see the way forward that the funding will be real. India, our Prime Minister has made a call that this climate finance system needs not only millions or billions, it might even need trillions of dollars in the coming future. So a broader array of sources is definitely a welcome move. And the second document clearly mentions reinforcing policies and regulations in support of low carbon emission systems and phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. This was actually mentioned in the first draft as well in the para 39. So yes, definitely this needs much more discussion beyond the COP. The discussions will go to the World Trade Organization as well. Maybe in the second round of plenary of the World Trade Organization, we can see more discussions on that. So the main paragraph of these this 21-page document, these are the major highlights. There are wordings across this 21-page document, which more updates will be given later.
All right. So that was about the modifications, but also you mentioned about India's intervention. Can we get more from you about India's role at COP28? Because climate resilient development in the Indian Himalayan region was discussed at the Indian side event at COP28, and also India as a developing nation has also put forth the targets of clean energy, green energy. Let us understand more from you as to what role India played at COP28.
India has made 2-3 very novel initiatives. We already have an initiative called, we already have a mechanism called the Carbon Development Mechanism, carbon trading. India in this COP had made a new mechanism called the Green Credit Initiative. This Green Credit Initiative is a radical shift away from the commercially minded carbon credit mechanism to a system in which organizations, local body organizations, and even individuals are encouraged to create greenery in the society, create systems and policies and methods, micro methods to make sure that carbon is sequestrated. This is the core of the green wealth mechanism. And the second intervention that India has done at COP28 is the lead IT, leadership in industry transition. Currently, we know that in the COP and the UNFCCC mechanism, we have the Santiago network for transitioning, giving technology transition from the developed countries to the developing countries. On the same line, India and Sweden joined forces together to develop a novel mechanism so that big, heavy emitting industries like steel and coal, like smelting industries, which needs a lot of energy, has to be transitioned away into green and renewable energy systems, with creating efficiency in each and every layer of the supply chain, be it in technology, be it in how you smelt the coal, be it how you grease the engines, be it how you source the efficiency parameters, be it how you do the supercritical technology in the boiler. So this is one main initiative India joined forces with Sweden, so that the global south, the G77 countries. When we say G77, it's not only 77 countries; it is 135 developing countries. So that these countries get the most advanced efficiency systems. These are the two main things India alone made in COP28. Apart from that, India joined hands with the LMDC countries, the island countries, and the main focus point of India at COP28 was we emphasized on CBDR principles, common but differentiated responsibilities, because we have to have. We are a developing country. We need climate justice. We need climate equity. We were not one of the historical polluters. The historical polluters were the developing countries of the Europe 200 years back, particularly Germany or Italy or even United States. So India re-emphasized that CBDRC principles had to be given top priority in this COP28, and the rewording of the second document clearly says that is a diplomatic win for India.
All right, Vinod, we'll leave it here. Thank you for joining on and explaining to us the modifications that have been made at COP28. And from here, we now turn the focus to the UN. India voted in favor of a draft resolution in the United Nations General Assembly that demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict, as well as the unconditional release of all the hostages. The 193-member UNGA adopted the draft resolution introduced by Egypt at an emergency special session on Tuesday. The resolution was adopted with 153 votes in favor, while 23 nations abstained and 10 voted against the text. The UN resolution is not binding but carries political weight, reflecting a global view on the war. William Denslow gets us details from the UN headquarters in New York.
The support for this resolution was resounding. 153 nations voting at the UN General Assembly Hall, voting in favour of a resolution that demands the immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. This comes after a similar resolution was vetoed by the United States at the UN Security Council late last week. The US at the time saying that such a ceasefire would essentially give Hamas the time to regroup, and that's why they're against that move.
153 in favor, 10 against, 23 abstentions. Draft Resolution A/ES10/L27 has been adopted.
Significantly as well, the United States did offer an amendment to the resolution that was rejected. This called essentially for Hamas to be named and shamed in the resolution. Linda Thomas Greenfield, the US ambassador to the UN, saying that why is it so difficult for the international community to call out Hamas for the atrocities they committed on October 7th.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire and requires urgent and sustained attention. That civilians desperately need food and water and shelter and medical care. In addition, we support the release of all hostages immediately and unconditionally. Any ceasefire right now would be temporary at the best and dangerous at worst. Dangerous to Israelis, who would be subject to relentless attacks, and also dangerous to Palestinians, who deserve the chance to build a better future for themselves, free from Hamas.
Now, we had a very strong message as well from the President of the UN General Assembly, Dennis Francis, speaking at this session.
I used my recent attendance at the Doha Forum and every other platform I can to encourage cooperation among states with the same singular goal in mind: to make peace for all. In the name of humanity, I ask you all once again, stop this violence now.
Our challenge in this extraordinarily difficult time is to strike the right balance. The gravity and complexity of what the international community faces is underlined by the Secretary-General invoking Article 99 of the Charter of the United Nations. We therefore welcome the fact that the international community has been able to find a common ground to address the multiple challenges facing the region right now.
William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
We're heading for a short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. After the break, Chinese President Xi Jinping on a two-day visit to Vietnam. UK lawmakers vote in favor of Rwanda's asylum plan. And 3 microquakes shook Mexico City.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political, and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News Hour, and I'm Preeti. Let's get to updates on Russia-Ukraine war now. US President Joe Biden has urged Congress to approve billions of dollars for Ukraine, warning that not to do so would be a Christmas gift for Russia's leader. Biden met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on Tuesday amid a funding fight which has seen Republicans refuse to support extra assistance for Kyiv. Nick Harper gets us details from Washington.
US President Joe Biden used his remarks in the Oval Office and in the subsequent press conference to attack Republicans who are blocking new aid to Ukraine. He argued that Russia would be emboldened by the deadlock on Capitol Hill, adding history will judge harshly those who turn their back on freedom's cause. At issue, conservative Republican lawmakers demand to allocate significant funding to strengthen security at the US-Mexico border. Without that, they say they're unwilling to support new funding for Ukraine. Biden noted that Russian TV had celebrated the Senate's failure last week to pass a bill, the television host pointing out it was good for Russia. In an obvious dig at Republicans, Biden said, if you're being celebrated by Russian propagandists, it's probably time to rethink what you're doing.
The American people, Democrats and Republicans, alike, I think, understand this, and they understand the very real fight that's going on right now. In the winter, this winter, Putin plans once again to bombard Ukraine's electric grid, intends to, with rockets, plunging families into darkness in the coldest part of the year, and doing great damage. We can't and won't let him succeed. We mustn't let him succeed in that. Mr. President, I called on Congress to do the right thing, to stand with Ukraine and to stand up for freedom.
Ukraine is gradually becoming less dependent on aid, and we are moving to the right, I think, right direction, and I want to discuss with the President how to strengthen it, especially enhancing our air defense and ability to destroy Russia's logistics. Our goals for 24 are clear: take away Russia's superiority and disrupt their offensive operations.
But with US lawmakers leaving Washington at the end of this week for the holidays and not returning until the new year, there's a race on to pass new legislation and new funding as soon as possible. Biden urged Congress to approve the money this week, saying if they didn't, they'd be giving Putin the greatest Christmas gift they could possibly give him. Meanwhile, the US Treasury announced new sanctions on more than 150 individuals and entities that the US says is allegedly helping Russia's military. The US says that those who've been blacklisted have supplied technology, tools and equipment to help Moscow in its fight against Kiev. One small win, Zelensky leaves Washington with an additional $200 million, money Congress has already approved and that Biden is now releasing to Kiev. But it's nowhere near the more than $60 billion that Biden had asked Congress to approve. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
US Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said on Tuesday that it would be practically impossible for Congress to pass a supplemental funding package containing aid for Ukraine before Christmas, even if a deal was struck in the coming days. McConnell told reporters that a deal on legislation to aid Ukraine, Israel and the Indo-Pacific will not happen unless President Biden is fully engaged with Senate Republicans in talks aimed at including provisions to restrict migrant crossings at the US-Mexico border. The Philippines Foreign Ministry has summoned China's ambassador to Manila to protest back-to-back harassment at the South China Sea at the weekend. Manila has asked China to direct its vessels to cease and desist from what it said were illegal actions and stop interfering in legitimate Philippine activities. The ministry said in a statement, Foreign Ministry delivered the protest against the Chinese maneuvers that led to a coalition and against the use of water cannons against Philippine vessels. Patrick is joining us with more from Singapore. Patrick, Philippines is warning that the South China Sea is a bigger potential flashpoint than Taiwan. What more can you tell us on this?
Yeah, that's right. That was in an interview with Nikkei Asia in which Jose Manuel Romualdez said that, look, if anything happens in our patch, it could potentially lead to the next world war. It's hard to say whether or not it is the bigger flashpoint of the two, but certainly we have seen an increase in confrontations and concerning incidents, including the firing of water cannon by the Chinese side and collisions as well. These are arguably more serious incidents than what we've seen when it comes to Taiwan, which has really been limited to incursions more than anything else. That said, we have also been reading reports that there has been a step up in Chinese intimidation of Taiwan ahead of presidential elections taking place in January. And also, you have to ask yourself the question, to what extent is this really meant to distract attentions away from Taiwan? Now, China has accused the Philippines of provoking Beijing and has also said that its actions are short-sighted. Chinese media also accused the US of instigating the trouble and warned that acting as a pawn for the US will result in negative consequences for the Philippines.
Patrick, also in the interview, the Philippine ambassador shared details with President Marcos' recent meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. What more can you tell us on this?
Yeah, that's right. If you remember, the two leaders crossed paths during the APAC summit in California. Now, the Philippine ambassador accused the Chinese leader of being evasive and non-committal and said that President Marcos had wanted to go and defuse tensions over the South China Sea with Xi Jinping, but he was disappointed by the conversation and said that when he tried to engage on the topic, he essentially said that this should be left to defense officials and diplomats to deal with. Now, separately, the Philippines, if you remember in recent days, has accused China of being insincere about calls for peaceful dialogue to resolve their disputes. So, again, we are seeing the same sort of picture that the Philippines is trying to paint of demonstrating to the world its actions in the South China Sea, and also with these comments really saying that China doesn't really have any real intention to solve these issues peacefully. And remember, President Xi Jinping recently told the military to step up Chinese enforcement of the law in the South China Sea as well.
All right, Patrick, thank you for joining in with those details. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk's government won a vote of confidence in the parliament voting results showed. Also, Tusk received the support of 248 lawmakers, while 201 voted against him at the end of a sitting that was disrupted by a far-right deputy. In his inaugural speech to Parliament, Tusk called on Poland's fractious political class to unite, saying it cannot afford divisions while Russia is waging a war of aggression across the border. Tusk's government will be sworn in by President Andrzej Duda today before the new Prime Minister heads to Brussels for a summit of European Union leaders. Egypt's presidential elections came to a close at 1900 GMT on Tuesday, with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi expecting another 6-year term in the absence of real competition. Now, this was Sisi's third election since coming to power in 2013. Egypt's National Election Authority informed that the turnout on the first 2 days reached about 45%, surpassing that of the last presidential election in 2018. Results are expected on December 18th. In Slovakia, thousands of people protested across the country against plans by Prime Minister Robert Fico's government to fast-track criminal law changes that include scrapping a special prosecutor's office focused on corruption. In Bratislava, protesters waved Slovak and European Union flags as they gathered at Freedom Square to oppose changes sought by a government appointed in October. Slovak President Zuzana Kapitova has said the proposed changes included unacceptable political meddling in personal matters and said that they threaten to weaken the position of whistleblowers and could lead to a halt in the inflow of European Union funds. The UK government has won a crucial vote on a controversial plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda to have their claims processed there. But several MPs from the governing Conservative Party abstained from voting and say that they'll try to amend the legislation next year. DD India's Ollie Barrett reports from London.
This is just the first stage, really, of this legislation going through Parliament in the UK. And so while this can be seen in some ways as a victory for Rishi Sunak, there are certainly potential problems further down the line still to come. A series of his own Conservative MPs abstained in this vote, saying that they hope that the government will toughen this legislation further down the parliamentary process. But on the left and in the moderate centre wing of the Conservative Party, quite a lot of Conservative MPs are saying, well, if this legislation is toughened any further, then we won't be able to support it anymore. So the Prime Minister still has a huge battle on his hands, seeing this legislation finally passed when it gets back to Parliament early next year. He insists that it's a policy that can work, it's legislation that is nearly watertight, and that therefore planes can get up and running in the new year to Rwanda with asylum seekers on board, and that this scheme therefore can begin to work as a deterrent against illegal migration. Critics of the policy say it simply won't work. The opposition Labour Party calls it a gimmick. Labour are also saying that they believe that the events of the last 24 hours or so in the House of Commons and the discussion among Conservative MPs shows that the Conservative Party is in chaos. The government, though, as I say, remains committed to this legislation. It remains committed to the agreement with Rwanda. The idea behind it is that it would see some asylum seekers sent to Rwanda to process their claims there. And the specific idea of this legislation, if it eventually gets passed, is to try and alleviate some of the concerns raised by the Supreme Court last month when judges struck down the policy as unlawful. Ollie Barrett in London, reporting for DD India.
Let's take a look at other stories making it to the headlines from across the world now. A U.S. citizen accused of trying to stab his girlfriend and a taxi driver in Brazilian city of Salvador jumped from his hotel room on Tuesday to escape the police. The accused was staying at the hotel with false documents, making it difficult to trace him. 3 small quakes shook buildings in Mexico City on Tuesday morning. The 3 microquakes had hit between 11:06 and 11:09 local time and were particularly felt in the south and center of the seismically active city. Different intensities were felt depending on the places the quakes hit. Mexican migrants were seen waiting for the processing and transportation to temporary centers after crossing the Arizona border wall into the U.S. Migrants from different countries were gathered near the border town of Lukeville on Tuesday. This had been shut down last week temporarily by the government due to the overwhelming numbers. Bolivian rescuers are working to de-oil birds after a spill in Lake Titicaca, which came from a vegetable oil truck that had overturned last month. With over hundreds of them dead, Andean coot, a native bird species, has been the most affected. A quick break ahead, but when we come back after the break, Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence Summit is underway in New Delhi with focus on ensuring ethics, transparency and democratic values. We get you more on this. Swearing-in ceremony of new governments in Indian states of Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh today. And 6-member central team arrives to assess flood impact by Cyclone Mibjong in Chennai.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour and I'm Preeti. A quick relook at the top stories once again. COP28's final proposed deal references transition away from all fossil fuels, says move to enable the world to reach net zero by 2050. UN General Assembly overwhelmingly demands Gaza ceasefire. India votes in favor of the draft resolution. 10 countries, including US and Israel, vote against it. Biden says Putin is banking on the U.S. failing to deliver for Ukraine as he meets his Ukrainian counterpart in Washington. Zelensky says it would be insane for Ukraine to be willing to give up occupied territory. India remembers martyrs and victims who lost their lives while defending the parliament 22 years ago. Prime Minister pays floral tributes at parliament premises. The deadly terror attack on Indian Parliament 22 years ago shook the country. Today, India pays tribute to the martyrs who made the ultimate sacrifice while preventing the attack. In a tragic incident, 9 people were killed and 18 were injured, including 6 Delhi police and 2 Parliament security officials. One of the attackers wore a suicide vest that exploded after he was shot. This explosion killed him and the 4 other terrorists. The main suspects of the terror attack were identified as Afzal Guru and his cousin Shaukat Hussain Guru. In 2013, Afzal Guru was condemned to death and hanged in Tihar jail. Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar and Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla led the nation in paying floral tributes to martyrs and victims of 2001 Parliament attack at the Parliament premises. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also paid heartfelt tributes to the brave security personnel martyred in the attack. He said, and I quote, "Their courage and sacrifice in the face of danger will forever be etched in our nation's memory." Several cabinet ministers and other members of Parliament also paid tribute to the fallen Jawans. President Draupadi Murmu also remembered the victims of the parliament attack. In a tweet, she said, and I quote her, "On this day, 22 years ago, the nefarious plan of terrorists to eliminate the top line of political leadership of the country and damage our temple of democracy was foiled by the brave security personnel, including the 9 who laid down their lives for the motherland. The nation will forever remain in their debt. Their sacrifice will not be allowed to go in vain as we reiterate today our pledge to wipe out terrorism, a threat to humankind everywhere in all its forms and manifestations." Up next, we take a quick look at what is lined up for the 7th day of the winter session of Parliament today. In Lok Sabha, that is the lower house of Parliament, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will introduce the Central Goods and Services Tax, Second Amendment Bill 2023, and the Provisional Collection of Taxes Bill 2023. Besides, Communications Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw will introduce the Post Office Amendment Bill 2023 for consideration and passage. The bill has already been passed by the Rajya Sabha. Also, when we talk of what all is to be taken up in the Rajya Sabha, then Law Minister Arjun Ram Meghwal will introduce the Repealing and Amending Bill 2023 for consideration and passage. Also, Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan will introduce the Central Universities Amendment Bill 2023 for consideration and passage. Lok Sabha has already passed the bill. Meanwhile, the Upper House of Parliament passed the Chief Election Commissioner and Other Election Commissioners Bill 2023. It provides for the appointment, salary and removal of the Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners. The President will make the appointment on the recommendation of a selection committee, which consists of the Prime Minister, a Union Cabinet Minister and Leader of Opposition or Leader of the largest opposition party in Lok Sabha. The 3-day Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence Summit is underway here in New Delhi. Inaugurating the event on Tuesday, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a clarion call for a worldwide framework for ethical, responsible and secure development of the technology. Also, according to a recent survey, people are more concerned than excited by the technology, with challenges ranging from data privacy to job displacement. Patrick Falk explores some of the issues at stake and also looks at what's being done to address them.
It's estimated today that there are more than 1 billion security cameras worldwide. They're tracking and recording every move and every moment. With the advent of artificial intelligence, experts say we're seeing a seismic shift towards autonomous surveillance systems with the ability to process vast amounts of data and identify patterns and anomalies to create a new world of possibilities for law enforcement and security. It's also ripe for abuse. This was one of the key sticking points on a European Union rulebook to regulate AI.
Europe has positioned itself as a pioneer.
Members reached a provisional deal on Friday to move forward with the legislation. They agreed governments can only use real-time biometric surveillance in public spaces to prevent specific threats like terrorist attacks or to search for suspects in serious crimes.
This is yes, I believe, a historic day.
Untargeted scraping of facial images on the internet to create facial recognition databases or social scoring based on social behavior, for example, are banned. The draft rules paved the way for the EU to become the first major world power to enact laws governing AI. But not everyone is happy.
Rights groups say the deal effectively means the EU has taken a step towards legalizing live public facial recognition. For many people, that's a step backwards in privacy protection.
According to Pew Research, data privacy is the leading concern among Americans when it comes to the negative impacts of artificial intelligence. It's just one of a myriad challenges in setting guardrails to prevent misuse of the technology. But AI is already revolutionizing industries, and the clock is ticking for governments to set standards on everything from the dissemination of information to ethics and more.
It'll be unthinkable not to have intelligence integrated into every product and service. It'll just be an expected, obvious thing.
According to Bloomberg Intelligence, the generative AI market could be worth as much as $1.3 trillion in the next 10 years. That's compared to a market size of about $40 billion in 2022. And it covers an array of industries. But with so much at risk, governments must balance the benefits and address the issues at stake without stifling opportunity.
I think there are huge possibilities, and I'm concerned that so much of the conversation is negative rather than looking also at the same time as some of the incredible ways of harnessing this never-before-seen power, which could be a huge, huge boost.
The European Union's AI Act could act as a blueprint for countries around the world to enact legislation, but there's likely still a long road to go before comprehensive and effective regulation falls into place. Patrick Frog in Singapore for DD India.
As the world is collectively moving towards AI, World Economic Forum says that the job market in India is estimated to witness 22% expansion over the next 5 years, with majority of roles coming from the field of AI and machine learning. According to media reports, this can be credited to Indian government's initiatives under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership that focus on upskilling and reskilling workforce through initiatives such as Skill India Mission and National Education Policy. In the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu, a 6-member central committee undertook an extensive inspection of the aftermath caused by Cyclone Mibjong. Before their visit, the team held a consultation session with Tamil Nadu Chief Secretary at the Chennai Secretariat. Upon arrival, the committee split into 2 teams to assess the impact across rain-affected areas. One team scrutinized North Chennai, Central Chennai, Avadi and Tiruvallur districts, while the other focused on South Chennai, Chengalpattu and Kanchipuram. Accompanying the central team were officials from Tamil Nadu government, municipal corporation representatives and dedicated district collectors. They closely examined severely affected areas like Valacheri, Madipakkam, Perumbakkam, Pallikarana, among others. The new Chief Ministers of Indian states of Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh will take oath on Wednesday. BJP's Mohan Yadav will take oath as Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, while Vishnu Dev Sai will take oath as the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the swearing-in ceremonies of the newly elected Chief Ministers. Union Home Minister Amit Shah and BJP President Jagat Prakash Nadda are also likely to attend the swearing-in ceremony. The Indian Coast Guard ship Sajag on an offshore patrol vessel is on a 3-day visit to the UAE as part of its ongoing strategic overseas deployment to West Asia. The ship is equipped with state-of-the-art weapon systems, sensors, navigation and communication systems, including an integral helicopter, showcasing India's shipbuilding prowess under the Make in India initiative. Commanded by Deputy Inspector General S.R. Patel, Indian Coast Guard ship Sajag is a key asset in the Indian Coast Guard fleet of offshore patrol vessels based on the west coast of India in Porbandar, Gujarat. Inspector General S.R. Patel will be leading it.
Indian Coast Guard ship Sajag is on strategic overseas deployment to the West Asian countries. The ship has visited prior this Oman, Saudi Arabia and UAE presently since 10 December 23. This ship's visit to the West Asian countries is in lines with the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Sagar, the security and growth for the region, and also this has enabled the Indian Coast Guard to showcase the shipbuilding industries, both public and private, under the aegis of Make in India, the program which was launched by the Government of India in 2014.
Ranked as India's 4th largest industry, the wedding sector holds vast potential for generating substantial employment opportunities. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has recently made a call to opt for Indian destinations over foreign ones for weddings to drive significant employment growth and retain the country's business within its borders. Let's show you a detailed report.
This is wedding season in India, the season for Band Baza Bharat.
Beautifully decorated gardens and banquet halls can be seen in every city of our country. There are many trends that are gaining momentum, and one such trend is going for foreign trips for destination weddings. Recently, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi requested the Indian public to conduct their destination weddings on Indian destinations. It is a season of weddings in India, and between new trends and choice of destination wedding, a business of 4.2 lakh crore is expected. But these figures are of business generated from marriages taking place in the country, whereas every year about 5,000 weddings are organized outside the country. Indians spend around 1 lakh crore on destination weddings held abroad. To generate huge employment through weddings, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has appealed to the families to organize marriage ceremonies on their own soil amidst Indian culture and civilization.
मैं तो चाहता हूं मेरे देश के नौजवानों को मेक इन इंडिया जैसे है ना वैसे ही एक मूवमेंट चलना चाहिए वेड इन इंडिया शादी हिंदुस्तान में करो.
Banquet halls, hotels, open lawns, community center, public park, farmhouses and many other types of venues are booked for wedding across the country. Apart from procurement of props, every wedding also involves a variety of services including tent decorator, flower arrangement, crockery, catering service, travel service, cab service, photographer, videographer, band, etc. Along with this, event management has also emerged as a big business opportunity.
The weddings which are held in foreign countries certainly take Indian money outside. Approximately in 1 year, 5,000 Indian weddings take place outside the country, in which almost 1 lakh crore Indian rupees is spent. Plus, people spend more when they go outside.
If we talk about popular destinations in India, with Siddharth Malhotra and Kiara Advani's Fort Barwada wedding and Katrina Kaif and Vicky Kaushal's Surigad Palace wedding, these destinations have become very popular.
Udaipur, Jaipur, Chandigarh are places with beautiful villas. I am surely in a favor of this. It is true that the revenues are generated and Indian money stay in India.
People spend their money in foreign countries. Their economy improves and our deteriorates. And our people do not get employment.
India has such historical places where large forts and resorts are made where grand weddings can be celebrated.
Goa, Lonavala, Dwarka, Jaipur, Udaipur, Jaisalmer, Pushkar, Mathura, Vrindavan and Agra are Indian wedding destinations of choice for couples. So the Indian public is in favor of the appeal made by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi that Indian weddings should be organized in India's destinations. This creates a hope amongst the families that this will promote and preserve Indian culture, inviting foreign couples to organize their weddings in India, also generating employment for a huge number of people and keeping the Indian money in India's borders. Ambika Rashmi with camera person Shiv for DD India.
Up next, we're heading for a short break, but after the break, we tell you Fed's Chair Jerome Powell will announce the central bank's rate decision. International Monetary Fund has greenlit the first review under Sri Lanka's extended fund facility.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back after the break, and up next we get you updates from the world of business. The Indian economy showed strong growth numbers in the second quarter for the financial year 2023-24. And following the second quarter figures, the State Bank of India has revised its growth projections for the current fiscal to 7% from 6.7%. The report noted that the economy grew by 7.6%, better than consensus in quarter two in 2023-24, supported by a buoyant growth in manufacturing and construction sectors. Industry sector clocked a 9 quarters high to an impressive 13.2% in quarter two as compared to 5.5% in quarter one. India's 8 core sectors posted a growth of 12.1% in October, according to the data released by India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry on November 30th. Let's take a look at some of its key points. Up your screens, we'll have the details. For April to October, the output of the 8 core industries was 8.6% higher year-on-year, up from 8.4% in the first 7 months of 2022-23. Output in 8 key infrastructure industries increased 12.1% in October as compared to 0.7% in October last year. The rise in core sector growth in October was largely due to the cement and electricity sectors, as cement production grew by 17.1% against 4.2% during the same period last year, while electricity generation rose by 20.3% in October 2023 as against 1.2% last year. According to the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association of India, that is FADA, the Indian two-wheeler market has witnessed a whopping 49.05% month-on-month growth this year. In November 2023, over 2.24 million units were sold as compared to 1.5 million motorcycles and scooters sold in October the same year. The month of November this year also saw an year-on-year growth of 21.08% as against the same month last year, with over 391,000 additional two-wheelers sold. Also, the homegrown companies recorded a sale of 274,000 units. The International Monetary Fund has greenlit the first review under Sri Lanka's extended fund facility, paving the way for disbursal of the second tranche of the bailout. The second tranche of $337 million is a part of the $3 billion bailout approved by IMF in March this year. The IMF injection of funds comes as Sri Lanka continues the efforts to restore macroeconomic stability, address debt sustainability, and implement growth-oriented reforms. Earlier this month, the official creditor committee led by India, France and Japan agreed on a debt restructuring arrangement with Sri Lanka, which was a necessary step to complete the successful IMF review and unlock the second tranche of the bailout. Let's get to updates on Fed's last policy decision of the year. Investors widely expect the Federal Open Market Committee to hold interest rates steady at its meeting. The FOMC interest rate decision will be announced on Wednesday, and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will address the media after the announcement. Fed is expected to keep its fund rate unchanged and to challenge rate cut expectations. Now, also, according to a recent survey, U.S. consumers are backing down from their expectations of rising gas and rental costs, and they expect inflation to moderate over the next 12 months. Let's get to updates from the world of sports now. In soccer, Manchester United's slim chance of a Champions League last 16 spot ended with a 1-0 defeat by the group winners Bayern Munich at Old Trafford on Tuesday, piling more misery on Erik ten Hag's beleaguered team in an already rocky season. Three-time European champions needed to beat Bayern in their group stage finale and hope Copenhagen's game against the visiting Galatasaray ended in a draw. Neither happened as Kingsley Coman slotted home from close range in the 70th minute for Bayern, who were unbeaten in Group A to finish with 16 points. United have just 4 points with their 4th place finish, meaning not even a Europa League playoff berth as consolation. Copenhagen won 1-0 in Denmark to finish with 8 points and reach the Champions League knockout round, while Galatasaray took the Europa League playoff spot in 3rd with 5 points. The chief of the Paris Olympics Organizing Committee, Tony Estanguet, said on Tuesday that the Paris 2024 Olympics will welcome neutral Russian and Belarusian athletes at the event next year, following the decision by the International Olympic Committee. Russians and Belarusians who qualify in their sport for the Paris Games can take part as individual neutral athletes.
As the organizing committee, we welcome and respect this decision, and we will welcome these athletes who have been qualified by the International Federation and validated by the International Paralympic and Olympic Committee to participate within the rules that have been indicated, meaning no flags, no anthems, no officials, no team sports. So these delegations will be very small but will be welcomed by Paris Olympics.
Russians and Belarusians had initially been banned from competing internationally following Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year, for which Belarus has been used as a staging ground. In March, however, the IOC issued a first set of recommendations for international sport federations to allow Russian and Belarusian competitors to return, and they have since done so in most events. Paris 2024 organizers offered a sneak preview of what will be on the plates of the athletes and spectators at the Olympics next year. Organizers unveiled environmentally friendly food choice at special event in Paris ahead of the Games next year. Paris 2024 athletes and the spectators can expect to eat meat-free burgers and quinoa salads with falafel, organizers said at the event. Come July 26th, Paris 2024 Olympics said the food on offer will be 60% vegetarian. 80% of all dishes will be made from produce sourced in France in efforts to reduce the game's carbon footprint. That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. Thanks for watching, but you can get back to us on Facebook, X and also Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.